Welcome to the Morale Booster Network, a platform for entrepreneurs, career professionals, leaders, and the general public to give back to the society through coaching and mentoring. I remain your host, Dr. John Ugulu. I am an author, speaker, and strategist. I always say experience is the best teacher. You can stream or download this podcast from YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Google Podcast, Player FM, and Pandora. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Morale Booster Podcast. I am Dr. John Ugulu, your host. In this season of From Idea to Impact, we will be navigating the journey of an author. We will dive deep into the creative process, the challenges, and the triumphs that come with bringing a book to life. In this episode, we are thrilled to welcome our guest author, Alan Black. Alan is an author of a book, an ebook titled Just a Closer Walk. If you are just joining us for the very first time, I want to say welcome to you. Please like and share this broadcast. That's what we typically encourage our listeners to do, to share the broadcast. And here's the reason why. Because you might just be saving the life of that one person who has been waiting for a lifetime to hear the message that we will be sharing today. Let's always remember that this is a coaching and mentoring platform where we bring people who have experience that can change your life. Let's embark on this inspiring journey together. Now, who's Alan? He's a great man, and he's an author. He is a Christian author whose journey is a testament to God using an ordinary person to fulfill divinity ordered purposes. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please join me as I welcome this Christian author, Mr. Alan Black. Alan, welcome to the Morale Booster Podcast.
Thank you so much, John. It's an honor to be here. First of all, I want to say congratulations to this amazing podcast that you're doing. When you are doing something like this, it becomes a purpose that's being fulfilled that I know God's placed on your heart. It's also a ministry of sorts because you are giving opportunity to speak life into people who may be seeking something, but they just don't know how to get a grip on it. So I think in our challenge as men, as people, period, as we walk along the road called life, if we're in a position to just speak a little life or shed light onto somebody, then we are fulfilling a purpose that should be fulfilled by each and every one of us in some shape, form, or fashion every day. So congratulations. I think you mentioned it's been year 5 coming up. So again, the commitment to stay and to be persistent and not waver I'm sure in the face of things that have been challenging, you're to be committed and congratulated for staying the course and having this great podcast. So again, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Mr. Allen. As a person of faith, the scripture says it's not by our power.
Nope.
Neither is it by our might.
Well,
but by the Spirit, says the Lord. This would not have been possible without great guests like yourself, great people like yourself who are committed to not just only bettering your own lives, but adding value to the lives of others. Without you having that mentality, that mindset of wanting to help others grow or wanting to become a person of value to others, the podcast would not have gotten this far. And like you said, yes, we will be 5 years. We will be turning 5 years in a few weeks. So yes, thank you so much. Thank you for highlighting that. And we appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule. It's not easy to take time off your schedule to get on a podcast, not to benefit you, but to benefit others,
Hmm.
people you don't even know, right?
True.
So,
But you know, the thing is, we all have an opportunity to witness to somebody on a daily basis. I'm old enough to recognize that the witness as such is not just merely by virtue of what we do. It's how we carry ourselves every day. It's how we express ourselves to other people. It's by our actions, which people are watching on a daily basis, whether we realize it or not. We are influencing people just by our behavior and the things we say. And there are people who are going to influence that we may never meet, as you said, by virtue of this podcast. One of your guests may say something that could be that spark that somebody else is looking for. So I look at it from the perspective that to whom much is given, much is required. So for each of us,
yes,
been given a certain thing. But what are we going to do with it? That's the real challenge. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's just kind of a philosophy that I've had that I got from my father, as far as, okay, that's all well and good. But what are you going to do with it? Because you can sit there and you can talk about it all day, but that don't get it done, as he would say. You got to get up and you got to do something with it and make an impact. And ultimately, your actions are going to speak for you because it will reflect the fact that you were committed to doing A, B, or C, and you accomplished it. And if nothing else, people have watched the journey to see that, hey, he did go from A to C. He didn't stop. He may not have gotten as quickly as he wanted, but he did not stop. And a lot of times people have to sit back and they say, you know what? The journey in and of itself is going to be a challenge. But the important thing is you kept pressing on to the higher mark, as scriptures say, and then you were able to reach that goal that you had in mind or that God may have had placed in your heart for you to reach out to and achieve. I look back over the course of my journey as a Christian author, John, and it's kind of surreal. I think about it a lot of times because I've come to realize that first of all, age is not a concern to God. Let me put that out there first. I started my journey as an author officially in the gosh, I guess it was in 2017. And I had just turned 62 at that time. Now, I'm thinking at 62 because I had been retired for a few years at that point back in 2017. So I had worked at a university in teacher education for my career. And so I was a mentor and I was a counselor and did things like that at the university level for students going into teacher education to become a teacher. So that in of itself, I thought, okay, that would be the fulfillment of my purpose as it relates to the essence of what my life was going to be about. So after I retired, I kind of took on a part-time job just to stay busy because I'm not that guy who's going to sit around all day, watch TV and do crossword puzzle. That's not how I'm wired. That's not how I was raised.
yes,
So a funny thing began to happen in 2017, and I'm going to predate that because actually in 2015, I just began to just write kind of short essays and certain thoughts and reflections that God was revealing to me through the Holy Spirit. And John, it was an amazing process because I was sitting there at my part-time job when I wasn't busy. I would just jot down some things in a Word document and I just kept writing and writing and writing. And so I remember starting in 2015, I started writing these short essays and I guess reflections. And I remember the first two that I wrote. I'll never forget this, John. I wrote my first two, and they're about 300 or 400 pages, 300 400 words long, 300 to 400 words long. Nothing really long, but I remember getting up from my desk one morning. I went and got some water. I came back to sit down and I looked at what was on the Word document and I couldn't remember what I just written. It scared me. It literally scared me because I thought, okay, wait a minute.
Wow.
Because of my academic background and how I am as a person, how I was trained via my education in college, I do things logically. A plus B equals C in that particular frame of thought. So when God began to move on me and he began to speak to me through the Holy Spirit and just had me to just write, it was completely out of the norm for me because that's not who I am. And so by the time I'd written like a third essay, the same thing happened again. I got up, went to get some water and came back and I couldn't remember what I had written. And it scared me again to the point where I remember, John, I reached out to a friend of mine who was a pastor. And I said, now, this is what's happening. This is completely out of character for me. It's basically out of my comfort zone. So I need to know, is there something going on with me? Is there something wrong with me? Because I was deeply concerned. And so I remember he kind of sat there for a minute. He said, well, Alan, are you willing to be open to what God's calling you to do, what the Holy Spirit's going to direct you to do? And I said, I don't know about that. And I said it that way, John, because I think it's important to be transparent. I said it that way because I was thinking, yeah, this is kind of deep. This ain't me.
I know
Okay,
that.
this ain't me. Okay, so I told him, I said, okay, I'll give it a try, but I'm not expecting much. So he said, all you have to do is just to be obedient. And so when we look at the course of our living and our walk each day, the first thing we need to do is just be too obedient to the call. Because when you are reaching that level of being obedient and you are going to base your walk on obedience itself, then you've taken a first step towards what it is you're being called to do. Because to take that first step, John, is difficult because, first of all, in a lot of situations, it's getting you out of self and you're comfortable in self. And so when you are called on to move beyond self and into a new arena where you're now beginning to really draw on, say, faith and belief, that can be very discomforting. And it can be an occasion where people might say, well, I'm just going to draw back and I'm just going to wait and see what else happens. And that's easy for us to do. So my particular situation,
It's not very easy.
no, it's not. So in my situation now, this is at age 60, I said, okay, I'm going to try this and we're going to see where this is going to go. And so I just continued to write and compile material until I'm going to say maybe around February of 2017. And so I reached a point where I honestly didn't know what to do with the material that God had given me. So I was talking to one of my former students who had actually read a couple of my essays, and she said, well, Mr. Black, why don't you write a book? And I said, well, now, but that's what authors do. They write. And she was like, well, what do you call the stuff you have here? I was like, oh, I didn't have an answer. And then she really hit me between the eyes because I was her mentor. She said, well, when I was in undergrad school, you always taught me to not give up on a dream or a challenge and keep pressing forward. So I sat there for a second and I thought, So that's one thing she remembered that I told her. Now she's going to use against me. Hey, what could I say, John? I couldn't say anything. I said, yeah, you're right. You're right. So in 2017, I actually wound up compiling about 35, 36 different short essays short stories. And I had come across a web community called Fiverr. So I went into Fiverr and I said, well, maybe somebody here could help me. I knew nothing about Fiverr. And I also want to share with you that, again, age is not a number. God's not a respecter of your age. Because not only was he preparing me to become an author, he was also pushing me beyond my comfort zone in terms of technology. Because I
Yes.
did technology in college at undergrad school. I wasn't a fan of it. But as the time kept passing and going forward and forward, I began to realize, you know what? I'm going to have to learn to use some of this stuff. Otherwise, I'll get left behind. So that tied into the day that I joined Fiverr. And John, I remember I put out a request. I said, well, hey, I've got these stories, these short essays, reflections. Can somebody like help me organize it and edit it and like format it for Amazon? So I'll never forget, I put in the request on a Friday night. And in my mind, I'm still thinking in terms of my humanness. I'm thinking, well, maybe in 6 to 7 months, somebody will get back with me and they'll let me know. And then maybe in 2018, I could get a book out, maybe. Well, then to my other shock, the next day, which was Saturday, I came back home after running errands. I opened up my Fiverr account. I had 32 people saying they wanted to work with me. And John, I'm going to tell you, it scared me to death because
That was life changing, I
I
guess.
was like, oh my goodness. I said, God, what am I supposed to do here? This is like 32 people. And I'm talking about people from all over the world. And it was intimidating because, again, a part of this journey was taking me into new territories. And anything that we're not familiar with, there's going to be a certain level of uncomfort with
Yes.
because you're going into something totally brand new. But again, this was just part of the journey that God was taking me through to move me into new arenas. And so I eventually settled on a young lady from South Africa who did the editing for my first book, which is called Here I Am, Lord. She did the formatting and uploaded the manuscript to Amazon. And I'll never forget the first Friday in May of 2017, John. I went to my Amazon account and my book, Here I Am, Lord, was there on Amazon. And I sat there that Friday night, I'll never forget, and I just stared at the book for about 5 minutes. And I stared at the book, John, because I couldn't believe what had just happened. It was like a year and a half ago, I didn't know anything about Fiverr. I didn't know anything about Amazon. I didn't know anything about writing. And here I am a year and a half later, I'm a published author. And if nothing else, that just goes to show you that you never know where your journey is going to lead you unless you take those first few steps along the journey to find out. There's an old saying that 1,000-mile journey begins with the first few steps, but you have to take those first
Yes.
few steps.
Yes. And all that resonates with me. I wanted, thank you so much for sharing all these beautiful information. And in fact, you talked about one of the major reasons why we decided to come up with this episode. You have just spelt it out that just like most authors, that it wasn't planned.
No, no.
It wasn't. Situations led to it happening, and you did not hold back. You did not hold yourself back. You did not allow limiting beliefs stop you because you already had that experience of knowing that when that momentum is available and you move with it,
Mhm.
the how to do it will eventually show up. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct because I tell you, I have learned so much along this journey. it's been comical at times because I remember when I was telling friends about my first book in early summer 2017 called Here I Am Lord. And let me explain the basis for the title of the first book, Here I Am Lord. It's entitled Here I Am Lord simply because in the process of that journey, I kept going back and forth. I don't know, maybe, well, let's see. Okay, yeah, God, maybe. And finally, I just got to the point. I said, okay, Lord, here I am. What do you want me to do? So that's literally the reason for the title, Here I Am, Lord, Send Me.
Yes.
So coming back to the summer of 2017, my friends were excited. They were like, oh, man, you got to have a book signing so we can get the book signed and get pictures. And I was like, how come what's a book signing? John, I didn't know what a book signing was. I remember I'm 62 at this point. I had no idea what a book signing was. And I asked my sister, I said, well, everybody wants me to do a book signing. I said, I don't know if I should do that. I said, that's what people who are authors. She said, well, you wrote a book. You're an author. And I was like, oh, I guess I am. Because I'm just me. That's how I think
It,
of myself. And
it
so
was surreal.
it's just not for real. And then people came to the book signing and they were like, ooh, will you sign my book? And I'm thinking, it's just me. Well, what are we doing here? And they wanted to do interviews and they want to take pictures. And I'm like, this is just me. And so I'm sharing that with the audience as well, because on your journey, trust me when I tell you this, you're going to be going through some doors that you never, ever expected to go through. To do a book signing, I've done 3 or 4 of them. Never in my wildest imagination did I think I would do a book signing. To do podcasts, John, it wasn't until 2018 or 2019 when somebody said, I'd like for you to come on and do my podcast. And I was like, what's a podcast? I didn't know because I'm not a techie person. They said, well,
Right.
there's this thing called StreamYard. And I was like, you mean like a pond of water? And they were like, no, no. And they were like, oh, goodness, you are just old and you just don't know. I said, I'm old and I don't know. I admit it. And they said, well, you go in here and you do this and you can go put the stuff on YouTube. And I'm like, what's YouTube? Because I grew up in a non-tech industry in education and I grew up through the 60s and the 70s with no technology. So coming into the 2000s, the middle 2000s, I'm getting introduced to things that I've never heard of. Like I said, it was
Mhm.
2019, they're talking about StreamYard and they're talking about Facebook and LinkedIn. And I've got a blank look on my face and I'm like, I have no idea. And so part of this also is to recognize that you don't have to know it all. You
Yes,
don't have
yes,
to know it
yes.
all. Do what you can do. And then you connect with people whose expertise is in different areas. I wound up working with a young lady who became my media manager person. She worked on helping me to get podcasts. She helped me to come up with ideas for my website. She was also helping me to do photo shoots. What's a photo shoot? That's for people who are models. She's like, no, you're an author. You have to have a picture like I sent you. I didn't know what that was 5 years ago. So again, audience, you are going to learn things. You are going to be transformed in ways that you cannot anticipate. But it's all part of the journey. But it's also part of a bigger responsibility of the journey because then you are going to be charged with the responsibility. And this is from a purely spiritual perspective. You are charged with the responsibility to give back because you see other people poured into me, particularly when I was clueless and had no idea what I was doing. But they demonstrated the passion and the willingness to be patient and work with me to continue to get me to a certain point. So then that spiritual responsibility comes on me where I can then try to give back, which I have been doing to others, to say, hey, this is the path that I took. This is how I've done it. These are my recommendations. And as well, because of technology, there are some new things you may want to check out. I don't know how to do them, but I want you to understand the power of what I call the C word. The C word for me, John, is the foundation of what I do. It's called collaboration. Collaboration is important because, again, you work within your strength, but you have to be strong enough to recognize and acknowledge that, hey, something over here or something over there, that's not my thing. But I have the vision and the willingness to say, I'm going to connect with people who can do those things that I'm not good at, because then it becomes a team type of effort, a holistic type of approach for you to reach a certain goal or aspiration that you've been striving to achieve. So it's about teamwork. It's also about when you're on your journey, particularly as an author, don't let your ego get in the way. Because again, you can't do it all. If you need help, humble yourself and say, hey, I need some help here. I need some help there, because it's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's about learning to collaborate. It's about learning to network, because that's what's going to get you to where you really need to go in order to reach the goal that has been placed within your spirit for you to say, this is where I need to go to.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Allen. Look, I have been listening and you have been blessing me and my audience with a powerful story that has so much wisdom in it. And to my listeners out there, if you are listening to us right now, I know we are global by the grace of God. Um, we are being listened to right now in different parts of the world. And to you who's listening, please remember to like and share this broadcast. And here's the reason why: because you might just be saving the life of that one person
Mm-hmm.
who has been waiting for a lifetime to hear this message. Yes, the message from Mr. Allen might just be that life saving message to that person. So please like and share it. Take it as your charity work for today. It is free, it is very free to share it. Just hit on the like and hit on the share button, and that's it. And you would be saving people, you will be inspiring people that way. So thank you so much, Mr. Allen. Before I talk about some of the key points that I took from your story, how many books have you published in total?
I have published 3 books. The first book in 2017 is called Here I Am, Lord. And for the listeners, my books are basically Christian inspirational, if you want to describe it as that.
Yes.
I have 35 chapters in each book, but the chapters, John, are very short. They're like 2 or 3 pages.
It's always better that way.
It's always better because it gets it to the point right away. And we're in
Yes.
a time and a space right now where people are not going to read chapters in
No,
books that are 40 or
no,
50 pages long. We ain't doing that no more.
no.
Let's just be realistic. And what people have come to appreciate with my books is the fact that my content in each book is essentially very down to earth, is very relatable.
Mhm.
Just as an example, in the second book, which is called In the Spirit Intended,
Mm.
there is one
What what
particular
is what's the title of that book again? Sorry.
second book is called In the Spirit Intended.
All right.
And in that second book, there's a chapter called A Square Peg. Now,
Yes.
the focus of that story is this: how many times in our lives have we been like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole? The point I'm making is, whatever your purpose, whatever your charge is, There are going to be times where you're going to be a square peg and you're not being called to fit in. You're being called to stand out. How do we recognize that? And when do we say to ourselves, I may be a square peg, but I'm not designed to fit in. I'm being called to stand out. So
Yes.
all of my essays are written in that vein where people can say, you know what? That makes a lot of sense because I'm a strong believer that whatever your faith is, whatever your day of worship is, that's all well and good. But what happens, as I call it, the morning after, the next 6 days? Because that's where the essence of who you are and what you stand for plays out before everybody else.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing all that. From your story, I picked several points. You said you don't have to know it all. Do whatever you can at every given point. And these are struggles that a lot of aspiring authors go through. They are always looking for the perfect time. They're always looking for perfection. And we all know that perfection is not attainable. That's what Vince Lombardi once said. He said, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can surely catch excellence. So,
Thank,
which means we have to get started. And you also talked about us being, as humans, being charged with the responsibility to give back. So that's a mandate for us to come into this world, discover our gifts, develop those gifts, and deploy those gifts. So deploying those gifts means we're giving back what
yeah.
we have learned. So thank you for sharing that. And you also talked about us being strong enough to recognize that with the vision and willingness, we can connect with our helper. So when we are faced with those situations where we feel we do not have it all, we do not know it all, once we hold on to the vision, that's what you're encouraging us to do.
Mm-hmm.
That when we hold on
Exactly.
to the vision and the willingness to act on the vision, we will connect with our helpers. Is that correct, sir?
100%. It's so much easier than we think. But
Mhm.
because of our humanness, John, we have a tendency to make things harder than they have to be. Authorship is radically different than it was 20 years ago. I found this out in the last 7 years. The other thing I would say to aspiring authors is do not get caught up in the mindset that your book has to be 500-600 pages long. That's not true. And frankly, people are not reading books 500 or 600 pages long anymore. That's not happening. One of my former students from my university days has written, I think, 2 children's books for young girls between the ages of 7 and 11. Each of her books, John, are about 20, 25 pages with illustrations and everything telling a story. Beautifully written, great message in each book. But what I'm saying here is it's not about how many pages in the book. It's about the quality of what you are sharing with your reader, with people who are going to pick up your material and hopefully be blessed by it. It could be 50 pages. It could be 25 pages like my student. All three of my books probably average about 125, 130 pages. It's not a long book. So don't get hung up on that. And also with technology too, John, it's changed radically where people would say, oh man, I don't know if I can sit down on my tablet and type that long and can I what if I have to use what am I going to do? Don't overthink it. And I was telling a good friend of mine who's a pastor about 2 years ago. I was like, listen, you're worried about how to capture your content. Your phone has a recorder. Just record a little bit each day. You'd be surprised at the end of 30 days how much material you would have. There are people probably on Fiverr or people that you may know that you can connect with who can take the content from your phone and help you to create a manuscript. Again, that's about using resources It's about not trying to do it all by yourself, and it's about collaboration. So I tell people, don't overthink it. Don't make it harder than it has to be. But more than anything else, get started. And one more thing I have to say, nobody can define success other than you. People say, well, you only sold 50 books, you only sold 100 books. Well, and my response has always been, you know what? No one's going to define my success because, first of all, statistically speaking, out of 100 people, 2 to 3 people finish the book and get it published. So if you get to the point where you've got it published and you're 2 or 3, you're a success. Let's just be real about this. And then as well, you may say, I only sold 50 books, I only sold 100 books, but you don't know what those 50 to 100 books are doing out there in the stratosphere. You don't know how it may impact somebody's life. You don't know how it could change the direction of somebody's legacy. That's for God to decide. And again, if it's been given to you, it's been given to you for a reason. Let it go forth and it will do what it's being called to do. And I'm a big advocate. You can't let other people tell you, man, you didn't sell no book. You ain't no good. And I always said, well, you know what? I got it out there. And oh, by the way, how many books have you written? Okay. I hate to be real like that, but don't talk to me if you haven't written a book and you ain't got nothing published.
Yes.
Because see, anybody can sit on the sidelines and say you should do this and you should do that.
It's always easier to be on the sidelines.
Yeah. What happens when game time rolls around? Are you going to get in the game and go at it? A whole lot of people will talk about it, but they ain't going to do it. I'm just being real.
Yes. We've got more talkers than the doers. So thank you so much for reminding aspiring authors about that. You also talked about not letting our ego get in the way, and that if we need help, we should seek help. And yes, I am an advocate of that. Seek help when help is needed. You also talked about collaboration and networking, that it is the basis for, one of the strongest foundations for success, especially for aspiring authors, for them to know that they cannot do it by themselves at first. Yes. So thank you so much for sharing all that. So now, where can our audience buy your books from? Where can they get copies of your books?
They can go to my website, which is alantblack.com. That's ALANT, like in Theodore, Black, BLACK.com, alantblack.com. There's information there on all 3 books on how to purchase them via Amazon. And hopefully as they buy the books, they'll find something in there that's going to be a blessing to them, that will encourage them. My mission in terms of where I'm at right now with my life journey, to be honest, John, it's about legacy. Am I in a position to be a blessing to somebody else? Am I in a position to give back as it was given unto me? I want to be able to say that I emptied myself as much as I could while I was here on earth to be of service to others, because it's bigger than just the person you see in the mirror. That it's greater than that. I've heard Charles Stanley use a quote that he said, humility. He said, humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. And I've always tried to go by that. I read that quote maybe 5-6 years ago, and I said, you know what? That's what it's really all about. Yes. What are you doing to make a difference? Because I have a personal belief, a spiritual belief, that when we all stand before God, the Creator, one of the questions He's going to ask you, did you do something to help somebody else along the road? And at that point, you can't get there in Him and haul, because He already knows your answer. So I want to be able to say, you know, God, I did what I could as well as I could, as long as I could. And there's some evidence of it.
Yes.
I don't want to get there and say, well, you know, God, it was all about me. How's that going to go? I figure that ain't going to go well. So
That that will
I
not
don't
go
have
well.
that conversation. I've already decided I'm not having that conversation with God when I meet him. Not Alan. That ain't happening.
Yes, I constantly like to remind people that we are in this world just to do time.
Thank
No
you.
matter how hard we work, no matter how lazy we are, no matter how good we are, no matter how bad we are, we have an expiry date.
Everybody does.
None of us will exit this life alive.
Nope.
But we have a mandate to make sure that we discover the reason why we were sent into this world.
Thank you.
And we have a mandate to use that reason to continue
Hmm.
the human race, which means if we fail to discover why we're on earth, automatically we are depriving generations
Thank you.
of what they should or what they ought to have learned from us.
Exactly.
So when we find out who we are, why we are on earth, we need to develop it and also put it in writing, put it in materials, turn it into scripts, turn it into podcasts, put it out there so that generations to come can learn from that which we were sent into this world with. So,
Right.
yes, it is our duty to know that we're here to do time, to discover why we are here,
Mhm.
and to quickly transfer whatever we learn while we're on earth to the next generation to come. So,
Definitely.
thank you so much, sir. It's been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and a privilege, you know, being here with you. I have learned so much from you, and I believe that our listeners have also benefited from your wisdom and your advice. And what I typically do is I always ask my guests to share some words of wisdom, words of encouragement, words of inspiration for just 1 minute. Now, I want you to speak words of encouragement to that man or that woman who is listening to us right now, who feels that um, he or she does not have all that is required.
John, you said something at the opening that God uses ordinary people to do
Yes.
extraordinary things.
Yes.
I am at best an ordinary person that God called into a season to do an extraordinary thing to become a Christian author. Starting at the age of 60, I began this journey. I'm now 69. I can say to those who are listening, age is not a number. Ability, as such, is that if God calls you, He will equip you with what you need. But your first responsibility is to say, "Here I am, Lord, send me. I am ready for the journey because what awaits me out there is what you're calling me to do." So it's important for you to say, "I'm ready and I'm willing and I'm able and I'm going to be obedient to the cause. And Lord, take me where you need me to go because I'm going to be a willing vessel." And that's what it comes down to.
Thank you so much for sharing. Lord, I am willing to do whatever it is you want me to do. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I believe someone out there has been blessed, someone out there has been motivated. Not just getting motivated, someone out there has been inspired to take action today. And that's what this platform is all about, helping people identify their greatness. And Mr. Alan, you have been an amazing, amazing guest on this platform. And I hope when next I invite you to come and share some words of wisdom, you would be willing to
It'll be
come.
my honor, whatever I can do to be of service.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yes, to all our listeners, like I always say, whatever has a beginning surely has an end. Everything has an expiry time,
Amen.
right? So, yes, we are excited to share some amazing ways for you to stay connected with our mission and continue to grow together. Um, there are ways you can get involved in this mission that we are connected with. You can support our mission and help us continue uplifting lives by making a donation. Yes, your generosity allows us to keep spreading hope and positivity. So if you who's listening to us right now is willing to make a donation to support our mission, please visit our website www.johnuhulu.com www.johnughulu.com. Secondly, if you are looking for some inspiration, I want you to check out our collection of inspirational books that are designed to motivate and encourage you on your journey. You can find these books on our website, johnugulu.com. Also, you can tune in to our latest podcast episodes where we share powerful messages of hope, resilience, and personal growth. So, yes, to listen to this podcast or to download it, visit our website, johnugulu.com. And lastly, you can also become a part of our growing community where we uplift and inspire one another every day. You can subscribe with $10 monthly subscription fee. Subscribe today and receive exclusive content, daily motivation, and access to special events, special coaching services. And by the grace of God, we have been blessed with a platform that can help you transition from where you are to where you want to be. So a $10 monthly subscription fee, all that can be done via our website, johnugulu.com. So thank you everybody for being a part of this journey with us. Together, we can continue to make a lasting impact and spread positivity in all we do. You who's listening to us right now, I don't know where you're listening to me from. I don't even know what you know about yourself. Neither do I know what the people around you know about you. But here is one thing that I, John, know about you. You who's listening, this is one thing that I know for sure about you. I know you have greatness within you. And with that greatness, you have the ability to transition from where you are to where you want to be. You have the ability to become the best version of yourself. And remember, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Stay blessed, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us, and talk to you all soon. Bye for now.